This is the New Architect. Encouragement is overrated, especially as a catalyst for personal motivation. In fact, sometimes when you hear somebody tell you that you can't do something, it can put a fire in your belly that will roar for a lifetime. It's not always the neighborhood naysayer. Sometimes it's the economy that puts restrictions on your ambitions, forces you to modify the dream. But really, it's those restrictions that challenge you to transcend the norm, the obvious, the conventional, that force you not to change but to evolve, and make you realize that problems to some mean possibility to others, especially for an artist.
Today we have James Kaminski, Jim,
Right.
as we've come to know you. And just a quick introduction here. Jim was mentored by Marshall Fredericks at an early age and was exposed to many prominent artists and designers at that time. He earned a degree in fine arts and interior design and renovated his first building at 21. He then worked as an artist for the city of St. Paul for a period of time before coming back to Detroit to design for entrepreneurs in the retail and restaurant industries. He then moved on to designing hotels around the country. In 1996, he began a 10-year stint as a specialty artist for a leading kitchen and bath design firm, and currently is concentrating on painting and working with a nonprofit. They work with people who have been victims of cancer, unemployment, foreclosures, and the aging boomer population to help them deal with the stress and depression surrounding them. He's also helping new entrepreneurs develop their ideas and helping education systems figure out how to teach art and design in public schools and colleges more practically. Quite a list there.
I'm mad.
Can we start with the beginning of that? I just have a quick question, which is, who is Marshall Fredericks, for people who don't?
He's one of the most prominent sculptors in Detroit. Actually, the symbol of Detroit is a large giant. It's called the Spirit of Detroit.
Okay.
He's worked all over Finland, all over Scandinavia. Cranbrook, he's got several pieces there. Are you familiar with Cranbrook?
Yes. Is it an area of Detroit, or is it a private school?
It's a private school
Okay.
up right outside of Detroit, yes.
Okay.
I basically grew up in his studio.
How'd you hook up with him?
Yeah.
My sister was his model.
Okay.
She was like 15 years older than me.
Yeah.
She would take me to his studio. She babysat me most of the time. So,
So one day you wander over there and you...
right, I established a great friendship.
yeah.
You know,
Do you remember how you grew into that?
I was really young.
Yeah.
We're talking 50 years ago.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. But no, he had all kinds of associations, like Carl Mills, all the Cranbrook greats. Mm-hmm. But there again, I was just a kid, but I was exposed to all these things very young.
Now, is this still at sort of the height of Detroit as a city?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, Cranbrook still rates
Right.
huge,
Right.
in the design world. But at that point in time, yes, the golden years.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way to imagine life without his influence?
It just was.
Yeah.
Think about when you were a child.
Yeah.
If you grew up with something around you, it just becomes normal.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So it was just your normal environment. And
Right. I mean, his installations were all over the world, so...
yeah.
But I wasn't cognizant of that. I just realized this guy built big things in his garage,
Right.
Big sculptures.
And so for you, art just is. It's just something that you do as a matter of fact, and it's not something that's...
It's been natural for me my whole life. So,
Yeah.
I've been very fortunate, extremely.
Right.
When you were saying your family, you're a bit of an anomaly. Is that the case? I mean, not a lot of artists in the family, so to speak.
No.
Yeah, and that's
No.
you would attribute that to kind of that environment then?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I said, my mother's, her position at General Motors with the auto design.
Yeah.
I was exposed to, like I said, design my whole life.
Yeah.
Very interesting childhood.
Any sort of transition out of that, or it was just always you were in college, you were, you grew up, so you said 15, you were kind of getting introduced to that and growing up.
Well,
in
I
the
was going into
studio,
auto design.
and then you were headed towards auto design.
Right. I was the kid that drew the best in class, won all the awards, all the candy.
Yeah.
No, it was just natural for me to continue.
Yeah.
And I was totally motivated by my parents.
And you started a guild when you were 21.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about...
Well, I was studying architecture.
Yeah.
And most of the people were doing their projects on paper with cutouts and whatnot.
Yeah.
And there were so many empty buildings in Detroit, I just took a building and renovated it for class.
Well, it's an interesting point. At 20, when you were 21, even then in Detroit, there were empty buildings.
Oh,
and-
yes.
So
In fact, I got an award for that. They called me the Young Pioneer of Detroit because we were coming back and rehabbing. And this was
yeah,
40 years ago.
yeah.
Interesting.
So how does a guild get? How does that come together though? What's kind of the gravity that's pulling that together?
Back then,
Yeah,
well, General Motors owned the building, so I went to Roger Smith,
yeah.
the president, and asked if he'd let us use it. He basically gave it to us.
You're 21.
Uh-huh.
Is that gumption or naivete or what is it?
Both.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, you know, when you were 21,
yeah.
I mean, you just did it.
You don't know what's not possible.
You know, if someone tells you you can't do something, it's one thing, but
Yeah, for me, if somebody told me I couldn't do something, especially at that age, it was a challenge, right? I mean, it's like, oh yeah,
yeah, I mean, it was natural, especially when you're around people that were, you know, open to, you know, doing new things, you know, other students.
Yeah.
So hence the guild.
yeah. Did you feel like a leader at that point?
No, not necessarily. You know,
Yeah.
it was,
Again,
I was
just
just
kind
too
of
busy. I mean, you know, you just wanted to start something. The gallery scene was so stuffy, and they weren't really bringing in young talent, so we decided to do our own.
yeah,
That's basically what it was. But this was 1973.
yeah.
But it went on for quite a while, you know, until I moved out to Minneapolis.
Yeah.
You know,
How was that move? Tell us a little bit about what kind of pulled you away.
graduate school.
Yeah. You missed Detroit immediately, or you were kind of on an adventure that was
Adventure.
yeah,
Yeah. My wife and I got married, and we decided to go back to Minnesota. That's where our family was from
Yeah.
originally.
yeah,
And plus, the Walker Institute of Arts is phenomenal. You know, it was a wonderful experience there, especially in the 70s.
yeah. Tell us a little bit about how you're crossing design and art. I mean, you're doing something very practical, right? When you're designing interiors and so forth,
Right. Making a living,
making a living.
raising 3 daughters.
Yeah. What is this cross between art and that maybe more intentional design? How do you rationalize those two? Is that two different parts of yourself, or are you kind of, is that one and the same thing?
Well, when you're trained in both areas, as an architecture and design or fine art, you know, I found a niche
Yeah.
where I can do the layout, do all the space planning, elevations, whatnot, sell the product, and I can also design it with my art.
So is
It's more
that
money in my pocket.
but is that a skin when you describe it that way? Is the art kind of the skin on the skeleton, or how is that working in your mind? Is it one in the?
Well, it
is
depends
I
on
think-
the situation, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
restaurants, especially back then, in the 80s, were primarily theme,
Yeah.
you know, and I'd have an entourage of craftsmen working with me, and I had a sign company,
Yeah.
a neon plant.
A neon plant.
Well, plant being a small, you know,
Yeah.
facility, but
Yeah.
so we pretty much covered everything. So it was like one-stop shop. But it led me into just tons of situations, lots of restaurants.
Tell us about kind of the arc of the restaurant development. Was there kind of, what period of time was that?
All through the 80s.
Through the 80s?
I mean, I did one a couple of years ago, and you know, but back then it was primarily full service to restaurants.
Themed restaurants or, chef-centric restaurants? What was the...
Well, you wouldn't know them here, but
Yeah.
similar. Remember Let Us Entertain You?
Of course, yeah.
Similar to that.
So kind of a restaurant group, so to
Right.
speak, and kind of different styles within that group. And,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like I did there was several chains. You know, the look was always the same, so it wasn't really that difficult.
So you're designing a system to some extent in that case, and you're designing an experience on top of the system?
Clarify.
In the sense that if you're designing a number of restaurants,
Right.
that have to be somewhat similar, but they're probably in different physical configurations in many cases because the buildings are different.
Right. Maybe like, they had an identity.
Yeah.
And I had to maintain and achieve that.
Yeah.
For the most part, it was mass production.
Yeah.
You know, not like McDonald's, but
How many were there?
restaurants,
Yeah.
75
Wow.
or so.
Wow.
In different aspects. You know, some were full design.
Sure.
You know, some were just, fresh ups. Some were just,
Yeah.
I did them.
Made good money.
The money.
Yeah.
In this whole process, what do you consider your first love? I mean, you're doing sculpture, you're painting, you're doing all this design work.
I did that out of, like I said, out of necessity. I had
Right.
a family.
Right.
And it wasn't totally about aesthetics or anything really that deep. It was a need in the community, and I fulfilled it. I had the skills.
Was there a point where you could see it transitioning back out to where you had more freedom to do what you were...
Like now.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
You know, I'm painting, past couple of years. Yeah, I literally took off 2 years and sort of went into hiding. I just
Yeah.
sort of came out
Just recently
past couple months.
to some pretty good results, it seems. I mean, you're getting great recognition.
Yeah, I mean, I got into that show in Melrose,
Yeah.
in West Hollywood.
Yep.
And they have talked to me about doing a solo show, but I'm not ready,
Yeah. Before we get too far away from the restaurants, we had an article out of D-Zine that was about a restaurant called Hell Yes, which was
Yeah, that sounds fun.
kind of a temporary thing. And I was just kind of curious to get some of your reaction on a theme like that, where they're kind of taking what they're calling kind of scavenged items, from natural environments, putting them together. For my own part, reacting to this, it seems like it's awfully high-end design. It's awfully, self-conscious almost.
I agree.
So
There again, they're creating a statement, like when happening, it seems like.
yeah,
I mean, I have done that. I've done restaurants where I've completely used everything from within a 2-block area, let's say.
really,
In Detroit, it's
Yeah.
very easy to find material.
yeah, to reclaim it.
Right. But I would make the light fixtures out of sewer pipe or old fans I'd find in the alleys or the basements and totally redo them, and, large collages out of billboards.
What's your, you linger a little bit and see how people react to that over the weeks and months after the restaurant comes online, so to speak, and see people react to it?
I mean, I've always been successful with the end result.
Yeah,
Could I have done them differently? Absolutely.
yeah,
But I've always had favorable press,
yeah,
But there again, any project, it's budget orientated.
yeah,
So many designers, they come up with all these, just these wonderful ideas, but are they practical? No.
Who's, when you talk about kind of reclaiming things in Detroit from a 2-block radius and so forth, who's influencing that? Is that you coming up with that, or is that the chef
I did
owner?
that 10 years ago,
Yeah,
12 years ago, where
Yeah.
I was way into recycling. And what do they call the antique people or the original the green
right,
recyclers?
right,
Found materials, they're wonderful to work with. You can do so many great things,
yeah. Does it,
Detroit always was a movement for some pretty edgy artwork.
any give and take between you and a chef, for instance, where you're kind of brainstorming about what this place is going to be like and how you're going to go about it, and
The chef?
yeah, or restaurant
The owner.
owner, yeah.
Honestly, they kind of let me go with it.
Do they?
Back then, I mean, I had a reputation and they liked my work, and it was all word of mouth.
Yeah.
So,
So hey, Jim's going
I
to
mean, I'm
come
not too
in here.
happy in hindsight as some of the things I did.
How
you know.
so?
Well, it was the 80s.
So it was
You know?
purple and
Now,
black
in the
lacquer.
90s, that was a whole different gig. I mean,
Yeah.
I got into retail and hotel work, and I started to mature more as an artist, designer.
So you feel like you were kind of practicing your bark in the 80s, or
Yeah, maybe watching other people, maybe a little bit of
emulating?
emulating,
Yeah,
but design in the 80s was just merging into what it is now. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's totally different.
So what was it in the 90s that you were more proud or less ashamed of? Was it
The 90s?
Yeah.
90s,
Your
I started,
own-
I did my best work when I hit 40.
was it your age or the age?
I don't know. I think it was my age.
Yeah.
And not being so intimidated,
Yeah,
and stepping away from the crowd.
So when you say you did your best work at 40, what's the work that you're most proud of that you did then?
Well, pretty much all of it. But see, I started getting into iron work, doing my own iron, working with more materials with my guys,
Right.
and we were totally fearless.
yeah,
And art, I've always drawn from the art world, so I started getting into finishes, don't say faux, but I got into the finishes really early, like in the late 80s.
yeah,
But I would draw from 20th century modern, like a Helen Frankenthaler or a Motherwell. I would do just large, big bold statements, and that really started to pull my career upward because nobody could figure out where I was getting my inspiration or my techniques from. So, so in other words, I had a chance to be a lot of people,
Yeah. And is it
a lot of artists.
Is it a self-aware thing when you're doing it? Do you know you're kind of stepping away, or is it just kind of a sense of confidence that it's starting to happen? You don't know exactly what's happening, but it's feeling right.
Well, there again, if you have somebody telling you you can't do something,
Yeah.
That's intimidating in itself.
Yeah.
But if you've got carte blanche to the situation and do whatever you want,
Yeah.
most of the people weren't incredibly intelligent. They just wanted something pretty.
Well, I feel, and I have to say, I mean, I often feel bad talking to an artist about kind of what they do and how they do it. I feel like I'm often putting them on the spot, or is it fair to ask an artist about themselves?
Well, it's an evolution in your life. I mean, I'm going to be
Yeah.
60 years old next year. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And looking back over the past 50 years,
Yeah.
I'm growing. I have a long way to go too.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited about what I'm into. It's a process.
Maybe tell us.
You'll find out.
So in the spirit of that, let's talk 40, 50, and what 60 will be. So 30 was emulating, 40 was gaining your voice, 50 was what?
Great.
Great.
Speaking.
Just solid.
Yeah. I mean, I've been very fortunate. I've been busy all along
Well,
up until Wall Street.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you have any opinion as you start to tackle something like a city that has all kinds of open storefronts and so forth? Do you have any sort of a vision of what that might turn into over time? As you start to put more design-minded people against those empty spaces, and
It's like
maybe-
that Bjork song, "Army of Me."
yeah,
If I could have an army of me, I'd go in there and take them over.
yeah,
No, I think there's a lot of room for a lot of, especially young artists, to get out there and get into the communities and work on these spaces that are just sitting there. I mean, no one cares, and if you just do it,
right,
I mean, there again, like I was saying earlier, if someone's telling you no,
yeah,
well, that's going to intimidate you. But if really no one cares, which is apparent in most of these ghetto situations,
yeah.
it's an open palette,
Yeah.
especially for creativity.
I don't know if you saw this screening last year, but Rick Prellinger did a screening in Detroit of a series of clips of films called Lost Detroit. And it was just Detroit from, I don't know if it was from 1935,
I've heard about
40
it.
to about 1970, yeah.
Right.
And so just seeing pieces of that, it made me wonder, and hearing friends who are going out to Detroit now from places like New York, do you see a rise in a place like New York in creativity and young people coming in and taking risks because nobody
In
cares?
Detroit?
Yeah. I hear little bits here and
They
there
are.
of a few people going
They
in
are.
there.
I mean, they're like I said, Detroit has nothing to lose
Right.
at this point. Detroit,
Yeah.
the city itself, it's just like it's a barren landscape, right? Buildings, and that's why Hollywood's so interested in it right now. But yeah, it's a wonderful opportunity to show off. I mean,
Right.
for any creative student or aspiring designer, because the whole world's watching.
Yeah.
You can do anything there, and they'll put it on CNN.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there anything in particular that you see there that strikes you right now? I mean, now being the last couple of years.
I
Or
think
have you
just
had
the
time
movie
to-
industry has
yeah.
really taken its hold.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm leasing some of my
interesting.
paintings right now for some film shoot. Everybody's taking advantage of the situation in the creative arts. As far as the city itself coming back, or
Anything, yeah.
any big-
Scaling down and being reinvented, I guess, maybe.
well, it has
Detroit.
to. Otherwise, I mean,
Yeah.
there's no one there. I mean,
Right.
except for, like I said, the cultural district. But it's such a wide, vast residential area that's been abandoned. It's open. There's a lot of urban farming coming in.
Yeah.
Sustainable, projects that are coming in, green. So, I mean, Detroit will not come back as an industrial leader again.
Any preference or desire for what it does come back as?
Myself, I moved out.
Yeah.
I mean, like up in Wisconsin and little areas around Milwaukee, you see some of the buildings being turned into fish farms.
Yeah.
You see some really progressive economic growth there. There's a lot of interesting things going on. But there again, you've got intellectual support amongst the people who live there. Whereas Detroit,
There's a lack of leadership, a lack of
Right,
forethought.
right. It's
Well, it's like you described something like Hollywood kind of moving through there. That's very temporal, right? It's taking a chunk of the
well,
city.
they've got 2 or 3 film studios there now.
Yeah.
You know, and you got Clint Eastwood shooting. You've got Scorsese. You got all kinds of people coming in. I mean,
So you see roots.
It's becoming viable.
Okay.
Right,
So you see roots getting laid down.
right. But there again, that's a small marginal.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
people are moving out left and right, and there again, Detroit's basically is losing its creative class that it started with.
Right.
The young are leaving in droves.
Yeah.
You know, all my kids are leaving Detroit. I mean, there's really not a hopeful future there for a lot of people. But then again, there's people coming in that are going to make the best of it and do something, hopefully very progressive and, beneficial.
So is it like a scratch pad for you at this point?
Detroit?
Yeah. Or are you just kind of done with it at
I'm
this
done
point?
with it.
Yeah.
I mean, besides, I live in the country and outside of Detroit on a few
Yeah.
acres. And,
Yeah.
I got a little creek going through my yard. And
Yeah.
up here, I have a studio right on Lake Michigan, right across from the beach. So it's...
So you're outside
I'm a
Detroit.
nature guy.
Yeah, you're outside Detroit, you're outside Chicago, and you're in Wisconsin. You're where?
Just outside Milwaukee.
Just outside Milwaukee.
Right.
It's always just outside.
I'm a fringe dweller.
Fair enough. But influencing what's going on in these cities for sure, with your designs and
Yes. I mean, design's is a precarious business for me right now. It's with the computer and with the internet and the boxing of design these past 8-10 years, it's not as viable as it used to be. So basically, I'm reinventing myself.
not as viable as a profession. Yeah.
No,
Because machines.
not like it used to be.
Yeah.
What's the biggest difference?
Well, I mean, you can go to any department store, and the person working there behind the counter would have a MFA and interior design. Crate and Barrel, any of the department stores all have free design included. You can go online and you can go into a virtual room and you can pick out on like Lynn Rose or any of the top furniture lines. You can see your space, right there. Hit a button and order it. It comes in a box.
But is that good design, or is that just people thinking they're getting good design?
It's just modern culture now. It's just fast,
And it becomes a veneer, or it just becomes sort of non-design? What is it? Is it, if I can go into an IKEA tool and,
Don't you think partly it's because people perceive it as it's good enough? So
I guess
so
that's
they
what I'm
can't-
reaching for.
They may
yeah.
be able to discern
I mean,
if you sit down with them.
I always strive
what
to
the
try to
difference is.
reflect my client's personality and their, I put a lot
Right.
into it. It's very specialty work,
Yeah,
which I still do.
right.
And I've got some very good clients, but
Right.
it's just overall, it's almost like design is for everybody now, which is wonderful. But
In one way, yeah.
it doesn't require degrees and all the,
Yeah.
I talk to kids all the time. I get, they walk out with these big degrees, these huge expensive bills, and they can't get a job
Right.
in interior design or architecture. I
Right.
mean, that's all in a can. It's all
Yeah.
software.
So do you, with all these tools and all these changes, is it creating more artists or more mediocre work?
Well, there's some wonderful things going on
Yeah.
out there, absolutely, especially in Europe and coming out of China or Asia. There's some beautiful, wonderful work.
Well, just you're talking about this glut in automation and education and all of this stuff happening. So there's a lot more opportunity to design or work on art or work on something that you consider a work of art. But do you
Personally,
think-
or
well, I mean, just generally, not just there are just more people doing more stuff. So do you feel more optimistic about it, or is it just more like there's just too much?
too much.
Yeah.
Too fast?
The computer is a new phenomenon. There was no computers when I was in college.
Right.
So
Yeah.
from my perspective, to see the fine craftsmanship, the fine artists that were employed, and see them all unemployed,
Right.
over the years. I mean, I have so many friends that have lost their homes. I mean,
Yeah.
there's wonderful craftsmen that can't compete.
Yeah.
There's no place for quality, except for the very rich.
Right.
Right.
You know, So I don't know where it's going. I mean, it's going to be going out with my generation unless more people start picking up
Right.
fine skills.
And so we've basically compressed time. It seems that what you're describing is because we can do it so fast. The people who need to take time have been kind of squeezed out of it.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've studied under some wonderful masters. Oh, my God. Wood carvers, all aspects of, construction and design. But, and I was fortunate to learn the skills. But there again, the people aren't interested in learning them if they can't make any money,
As in the community of buyers, the time and the work has been lost. The love put into the work has been lost, and so the materials or objects that are getting created are arguably thinner in terms
minimal. Yeah, they're less is more. Of course, even in the antique business, even purchasing of antiquities, that's gone down. I mean, there's a huge shift.
Yeah.
In design. I don't know where it's going actually myself. Yeah. I mean, of course, it has to be energy efficient and green. I mean, that's a given.
Sure.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I mean, what we're living in now is post-war housing. Look at Chicago. Look at Detroit. These are all homes that were built in, late 19th century through the 50s, 60s. I mean, there'd be a ton of work in just getting those things energy efficient and bring them up to today's standards. But there again, people can't afford it.
Yeah.
Not what the economy is. It's so expensive.
Yeah. And you've got to organize.
It's expensive to be green.
So,
let alone have pretty green.
Right. Well, you're pretty in terms of beautifully designed.
Right.
Like attractive in any way.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're getting some of those. You are doing some of those projects now. I mean,
I'm planning on it, definitely.
Yeah. And so as you've kind of come out of this transition yourself, are you targeting anybody to get those projects? Or is your sense that based on the design, the painting that you're doing now is attracting the audience that you'd probably start to convert into some of the design work that you do more intentionally later? Is that how that?
I've got connections.
Yeah.
To start what I'm interested in doing.
Yeah.
I'm looking at extremely rural situations, like further north.
Why?
Because
you like it?
Local zoning ordinances.
More freedom.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The free of restrictions and interference.
Yeah.
We can always put it on camera and shoot it and show it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I mean,
that gives you a lot more ability to screw around with stuff.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, technology is absolutely wonderful for somebody who's in the arts right now if they want to explore and experiment.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty sharp double-edged sword, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's unraveling your industry at the same time. It's maybe helping it.
Right.
Right, but you understand what I'm saying about how interior design has been totally affected.
Yeah. Huge
technology.
Yeah.
I think the education system really has to change. Its restrictions on students. For getting a degree. In other words, a degree in interior design that costs $50,000-$60,000 from some art school. I mean, really, what's the feasibility behind that?
Right.
Other than keeping the school going.
Mm-hmm. Where does it go? Does it turn into more of like kind of an apprentice kind of relationship or something like that, and where people kind of learn up through the trade? And
that is what I'm trying to push more into.
Yeah.
As part of my programs, is try to develop more mentorship with students that are interested in learning a craft. People are just going to have to learn to live simpler.
Right.
You can't be simple in Chicago. I mean, it's too expensive.
Right.
There is a lot of wonderful talent out in smaller areas, smaller towns.
Do you see a desire among younger people to be to do this with apprenticeships?
I think so. Yeah.
Cool. So there is some
momentum
momentum in there.
Right. I see a lot of younger people realizing that they can see from the mistakes that were made in the 20th century.
It seems to me kids are awfully self-aware. They're awfully aware of the context that they're in and how we got here. I'm always shocked by how almost inherently self-aware they are.
And they're very disillusioned.
Yeah.
I know my kids are. I mean, they're There's going to be it's going to be interesting times, especially with the younger ones right now. It's gone out of control. Technology. You can only intake so much information.
Yeah. Right.
You know.
Yeah.
I mean, you see kids in the park and they're all wired in, and there's everything going on around them, and they're not even conscious of where they are.
Right.
When I look at some of your paintings, I think of some of your oils. I was thinking of technology. I mean, how much does it relate with your work?
Technology.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
Meaning?
some of it looks very biological, right? Like I'm looking at one painting here. I think it's an oil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're all oils.
Yeah. And it's oil on canvas, and it's red, and so it looks like blood vessels, but it also sort of has that disorganized sense of wires, and like it's smothering a person, at least to me.
Actually, I'm really sort of just, playing around with the energy within a form, especially a human form in that situation there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's capturing a spiritual energy, or I'm trying to figure out which one you're. Oh, okay.
Here, I'll grab it right here.
Plus, I worked as a medical illustrator when I was younger.
Uh-huh.
So
Okay.
I didn't have to be so precise. Oh, okay,
That
yeah.
red one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's in West Hollywood right now.
Okay.
But as far as technology,
Well, I guess just generally, do you think about it? Well, clearly you think about it a fair amount. But when you say it's out of control, what else do you mean, or where else do you see it as out of control?
I mean, technology, or
Well, you said it's out of control in the sense that we can only intake so much.
well, absolutely.
Yeah.
I can only take in so much. I'm sure
Right.
you guys get amped out.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah. I mean, I've been working on this for about 5 years, and it's astounding how much faster things move now, just in terms of
5
social
years.
networks,
Yeah.
digitally.
Take
I
another
mean,
5 years.
right? Yeah,
You
and
know.
just tracking it normally just is one person playing around with it my whole life, but actually paying attention to it every day.
Right.
It's just incredible how much it's changed.
Right. But
Yeah.
look at all these people, what they do for a living. I mean, especially in the workforce. I mean, they're in front of these screens all day, and they're entertained by it at night.
Yep.
It's going to take its toll on us, I think.
I think it is. And you were talking about younger people. There was a guy I met who spoke a few weeks ago at this conference at PSFK here in Chicago, and he left an agency because he and 6 friends, because they were just tired of not working with their hands.
Right.
Remember this? Yeah. So there's this small pseudo agency that does very limited campaigns that are only handcrafted things.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see, and I think some of that stuff couldn't happen. Probably couldn't happen with the connections that they would need to do it and other stuff without digital. So it is really, there really are just these huge series of trade-offs.
Oh, it is. But it's so new. We don't even know the effects of it, really.
Yeah.
I had one of the first laptops, was it like early 90s? And I was on the internet back when it was Prodigy, like the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, I get on an airplane when I was doing hotels for 8 years.
Yeah.
People thought I was like, James Bond, because I had a laptop.
Right.
And that was only like 15 years ago. Shocking.
So given where you are now, are you, and I know it's a very different situation, but are you a Marshall Fredericks to anybody? Are you mentoring people in a way that you think is
Oh, I have.
influencing kind of?
I've had lots of, young people work with me. I'm like, geez, I had, at least 20 employees at one time. They all went on to very creative careers.
And in this new evolution of where you're going, is your intention to attract another kind of circle of
Absolutely.
youth around you? And
I think I'm most interested in young women, only because I'm a father of 3 daughters.
yeah, and why? What is it? I mean, obviously, is there an intrinsic kind of talent or lever that you can?
Especially in impoverished situations, it's the women, young girls take the brunt end of it. They're the ones that have the babies. They're the ones that have to basically be the breadwinners, or collect the money to keep the kid alive. The father's gone. I mean, in most situations. I mean, up in Milwaukee, for instance, I see just hundreds of young women with 2-3 kids.
Yeah.
In their teens.
Yeah.
And they're looking to try to figure out a way to make a living. Develop some skills.
So when you're working with them,
I hope that's what I would like to push more into that area. Yeah.
right? And they
There's
would.
a lot of local programs. especially in the Hispanic areas and the black neighborhoods up there.
Yeah. And so the goal would be to, through their experience with you, they would feel more empowered. They
Right.
would feel more entrepreneurial.
Right. I'm not afraid to just do it.
Yep.
I don't need anybody telling me no, yes or no. I'll just do it.
Right.
Especially at my age.
Right. And you can emote that
I can,
to them. And
absolutely. Empowerment's very important for anybody. Look, Detroit, it's happening there. I think the local neighborhoods are starting to become more empowered.
Yeah.
And things are starting to come around.
Do you see women as kind of stitching that back to being the beginning of stitching that back
because
together?
I'm a father of 3 daughters. And I can
Well, it's interesting.
I can understand the feminine mentality and their drive,
You've been in the
Yeah.
microcosm for...
Right.
It's interesting in some of the cause-based work that we've done over the years, especially in third world countries, women are seen as the beginning of, bringing responsibility back to a community,
Yeah.
microfinance and loans and so forth that will start to supercharge
Right.
what a community can do. And so there is something inherent in women that that I think we can all learn from and empower.
Right.
So
Your age group and younger, there's a big change going on right now. In society as far as women are concerned. But in my age group and the older, my God, voting is only less than 100 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you see in our age group and younger, what?
Less separatism between the sexes.
Yeah. So as you head further out into the rural environment,
Boonies.
and you have these women in urban environments that are very challenged, is part of your intention to kind of cross that world, pull them out, help them see what they can do, and put them back?
Oh, absolutely. And with technology, there's a huge bridge that you can cross now with technology that you couldn't before. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done out there that I know I could help with.
Yeah.
With teaching people skills.
Is it possible that we could have you come back and tell us about how it's going?
Oh, sure.
Okay. Yeah. Even if that's, months
Absolutely.
or a year later. Okay, cool.
Yeah, no, like I said, this is all just coming together right now,
Right.
And we've got some really good interest. Like I said, I'm working with the city of Cudahy right now on some of these issues. So I'm really shocked at that, get the small town behind some of our ideas.
Yeah. I think we're almost out of taper time.
Yeah.
We have 2 minutes left.
Tape.
Okay.
And I'll keep you up on my artwork too.
Please, yeah.
Well, we'd love it, and we'll put some up with the
On the
story
site.
as well.
That'd be great.
If you'll let us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just to show some people some work, like Brian was pulling some pieces. It's beautiful,
that'd be
beautiful
great.
stuff.
Really
Oh,
beautiful.
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the size is really important. It's hard to get the point across in those little JPEGs, but they're they're very large pieces, most of them.
Any one thing that'll save art? Any one thing you see in youth that'll ensure that good art continues, or is it just part of the human experience and we have to...
Express. People need to express themselves.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe that there would be something fresh come out or new. What's the old cliche that art is dead?
Yeah.
Everything's postmodern. Post this, post that. But it would be, it's something to look forward to.
One of my favorite recent statements is claiming things are dead is dead.
There you go.
Hopefully we're done with that.
You saw the Banksy rock with Picasso, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's that?
Art. What is it? Poor artists imitate, great genius steals. And then it says Picasso, and he's scraped it out of the rock, and it says Banksy. Love it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here.
coming.
Yeah, and hope I could come back.
We'd love it. We'd love to get some
great.
updates.
Maybe I won't be so nervous.
Not at all.
No, we got some great stuff.
This is great.
Oh, good.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
You have been participating in The New Architect, brought to you by Manifest. We hope you found the conversation valuable, the topics captivating, the subjects engaging. We encourage you to visit our website, thenewarchitect.com, and continue the conversation online. Tell us we were right. Tell us we were wrong. Tell us whatever you'd like. We can handle just about anything. Anything but indifference.